Hello and welcome to this bite-sized learning. We are going to look at setting up a Raspberry Pi without having a USB keyboard, a USB mouse and an HDMI monitor. It is possible to set up and use your Raspberry Pi without having a keyboard, mouse and monitor attached. You can use a laptop or workstation to remotely work on your Pi. However, there are a few things that need to be in place to make this work. On initial setup of the Raspberry Pi, you must have the Pi connected using a wired connection, as you can't interact with the Pi to set up the Wi-Fi connection. Once you have the Wi-Fi configured, you can use the Pi on a pre-configured Wi-Fi network. This means any Pi without an Ethernet connection cannot use this process and will need the initial setup to have a keyboard, mouse and monitor. The network you have your Pi and laptop or workstation connected to must allow the devices to communicate. Some public spaces or collaborative spaces have their network set up to protect users and prevent devices from talking to each other over the local network. They only permit device to internet communication. As your laptop and Raspberry Pi need to communicate, the network must support this. The network you are using must allow multicast traffic between the Raspberry Pi and a laptop. This can be a problem if one device is using Wi-Fi and the other is using a wired connection, as some access points do not pass multicast traffic between the wired and the wireless networks. The access point provided by my internet service provider is such a device. An alternative to using a local network is to directly connect the Raspberry Pi to your laptop via Ethernet cable. If your operating system is configured to support self-assigned network addresses, then your laptop and Raspberry Pi will be able to communicate. Your laptop operating system must support zero configuration networking, with support for multicast DNS and DNS service discovery. Support for this is built into macOS and Apple products. Many Linux distributions have this support installed by default. If not, the Avahi package adds support. Microsoft use a competing standard, so Windows does not support the required protocols out of the box. You're going to need to add support, and the easiest way to do this is to install Apple iTunes. Finally, you need a boot image on the SD card in the Raspberry Pi that does not require any user interaction before the Pi completes its boot sequence, and that includes the Avahi package pre-installed. The standard noobs image does require you to select an OS to install, so you'll need a keyboard, mouse and monitor at initial boot. If you have the IoT learning kit from Element 14, they ship a modified noobs image that automatically selects the Raspberry and install, so this card can be used. If you're going to create your own card, I suggest the latest Raspbian image, which also includes the Avahi package. If you have the latest Raspbian image, then you need to make a change to the image before inserting the SD card into your Raspberry Pi. In late 2016, the Raspbian image was modified to disable SSH on boot. To enable setup without keyboard and monitor, SSH needs to be enabled before the first boot. To do this, mount the boot partition of the SD card on a laptop or workstation. It's a VFAT32 partition, so should mount on Windows, Linux and macOS without any trouble. In the root of the mounted partition, create a file called SSH. It doesn't matter if it has any content, a file called SSH simply has to exist. On Linux and Mac, you can use the touch command in the directory where the file system has been mounted to achieve this. On Windows, use the direct option on the command line. Ensure you're in the root of the boot drive from the SD card and then use command type null and redirect to SSH. Once the file is created, you can eject the SD card from your machine and insert it into the Raspberry Pi. If all the steps outlined are in place when you initially power on your Raspberry Pi and then wait a short time to allow it to boot, you should be able to connect to the Raspberry Pi from your laptop or desktop using the SSH command. Specify host raspberrypi.local and use the default user Pi and the password Raspberry. If you change the host name of your Raspberry Pi, then the Pi will appear on the network with the host name in the local domain. It's highly recommended that you change the Pi host name, especially if your Pi will be on the same network as other Raspberry Pis, so you can identify which Pi is yours. You can use the sudo rasbiconfig command to change the host name. You should also change the root password so others cannot access your Pi. When traveling with your Pi, it can be advantageous to have your Raspberry Pi configured to your phone hotspot or be able to connect the Raspberry Pi directly to your laptop. This way you'll be able to access the Raspberry Pi if there's no suitable wired connectivity available at the venue. Once you can connect, you can reconfigure the Wi-Fi to connect to the Wi-Fi provided by the venue.